Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jitana Benton-Lee, Associate Professor and Director of the Nursing and Interprofessional Research Collaborative. I'm delighted to walk with you through another one of my passions that's transforming ideas into funded projects. Grant writing isn't just about filling out forms, it's about telling the story of your idea in a way that convinces others to invest in it. From the first spark of a concept to the moment you receive that award notice, every decision and detail matters. Over the course of this session, we'll explore how to shape your ideas into compelling proposals, navigate the funding landscape with confidence, and ultimately secure the resources you need to bring your vision to life. Before we dive in, let me walk you through what we're going to accomplish today. First, we're going to start with the basics of grant writing. Now, that may seem simple, but it's the foundation for everything else. We'll cover what a grant actually is, why people write them, and how the process works. Think of this as building the framework before we start hanging the walls and decorating the house. Second, we'll identify the components of a grant proposal. Every grant application has moving parts. Some sections are absolutely essentials. Others may vary depending on the funder. We'll go step by step through those common sections, like the narrative, budget, and justification, so you know exactly what to expect and how each piece fits into the big picture. Third, we'll spend time on strategies for writing successful applications, because knowing the pieces isn't enough. It's about how you put them together. This is where we talk about writing persuasively, anticipating what reviewers are looking for, and making your proposal stand out from the stack. This is the difference between having a nice idea on paper and having a fundable project. And finally, fourth, we'll explore grant opportunities for nurses. There are more opportunities out there than many realize. Foundations, professional organizations, federal agencies, and even local initiatives. I'll share some examples, point you towards some resources, and give you ideas about where to start looking. So by the end of our session, you won't just know what goes into a grant, but you'll have a roadmap for how to write one that gets noticed and where to look for opportunities that are right for your practice or research. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is grant writing? At its core, grant writing is the process of preparing a formal proposal to request funding from an organization, foundation, or agency. The purpose is simple but powerful: to secure financial support for a project by clearly communicating your goals, why they matter, and what outcomes you expect to achieve. In other words, it's your chance to tell the story of your idea in a way that convinces others is worth investing in. Now, why does this matter so much for nursing? Grant writing is one of the key tools we have to move our profession forward. It empowers nurses to design and test new approaches, improve patient outcomes, enhance training and education, and build a stronger evidence base for practice. Without funding, many great ideas stay just that, ideas. With grant support, those ideas can become programs, research studies, or innovations that truly change care. So, think of grant writing not just as paperwork, but as a pathway, one that connects your vision with the resources to bring it to life. When we look at the wide range of grants available, it's important to remember that every type of grant opens a unique pathway for nurses to create change and expand their impact. Not every grant is the same, and that's actually a strength. It means there's likely a funding opportunity that aligns with whatever stage of practice, research, or professional growth you're in. Matching the right grant to the right idea is really the key to moving nursing forward. So let me walk you through some of the common types. Research grants are probably the ones you hear about most often. They support studies that generate new evidence and help us improve practice and patient outcomes. Program grants are a little different. They fund clinical, community, and organizational initiatives. Think about new patient care programs or outreach projects that meet specific healthcare needs. Education grants provide resources for developing curricula, launching new training opportunities, or advancing teaching innovations. These are especially powerful in preparing the next generation of nurses. Then there are travel and professional development grants. These may be smaller in size, meaning amount, but they make a big impact. They help nurses attend conferences, workshops, or receive specialized training to build their expertise and expand their networks. Fellowship and training grants go even deeper, supporting advanced preparation, whether that's clinical specialization, academic growth, or leadership development. We also have pilot or seed grants, which are fantastic for testing new ideas and collecting early data. They're often the stepping stones to larger funding opportunities later on. Community health grants are geared towards improving health equity, access, and outcomes in specific populations. They help nurses design interventions that make a direct difference in people's lives. On the more cutting edge side, innovation grants encourage creative, sometimes high-risk projects. Ideas might not fit neatly into traditional funding categories, but have the potential to transform care. And don't overlook equipment and technology grants either. These provide the resources to bring in new tools, simulation technology, or research equipment that can elevate both practice and education. And finally, institution or collaborative grants are awarded to teams and organizations. These are powerful because they bring together nursing with other disciplines, allowing us to tackle complex challenges in healthcare from multiple perspectives. So as you can see, there's a wide spectrum of possibilities. The opportunity isn't just in knowing that grants exist, it's in recognizing which type best fits your idea and then positioning that idea to shine. Now that we've talked about what grant writing is and the different types of grants available, let's take a step back and look at the process as a whole. Think of grant writing as a journey. It's not a single step, it's a series of stages that build on each other. It all starts with an idea. Maybe it's a research question, a program you want to start, or a new way to improve patient care. That spark is where every grant begins. From there, you move into proposal development. This is the heavy lifting stage. It's about writing your narrative, building your budget, pulling together supportive evidence, and making sure your project aligns with the funder's priorities. Once your proposal is ready, you move to submission. That means when you officially send your application off to the funder. After submission comes review. Reviewers will evaluate your proposal. These are often experts in the field who assess clarity, feasibility, and impact. This stage can feel a little nerve-wracking, but it's also where your hard work gets noticed. If the proposal is successful, you move into the award stage where funding is granted and your project gets the green light to launch. And if it isn't successful the first time, that's not the end, I promise. It often means moving into a resubmission cycle where you refine, strengthen, and try again. So the process is circular. Ideal, proposal, submission, review, award, or resubmit. Each step matters, and understanding the big picture helps you see grant writing as a mystery, not as a mystery, but as a structured path you can follow with confidence. Before we move on, I want to pause and tackle some of the most common myths about grant writing. There are many out there, but today I'll focus on 3 that I hear the most often because they can really hold people back. The first myth is grants are only for researchers. Well, that's simply not true. While research grants are important, there are also program grants, education grants, community health grants, and professional development opportunities. Many of these are designed specifically for nurses in practice and education, not just those that are in academic research. The second myth is You need years of experience to be successful. Of course, having experience helps, but it's not a requirement. Funders are often very interested in fresh perspective and innovative ideas. And remember, you don't have to go it alone. Collaborations and mentorships are common in grant writing, and they give first-time applicants the support they need to succeed. And the third myth, smaller ideas won't get funded. Well, actually, some of the most fundable projects are smaller, focused, and practical. Funders aren't only looking for huge, groundbreaking projects, they're also looking for realistic proposals with clear outcomes. Pilot grants and seed funding are perfect examples of this. So, here's the reassurance you need. Grants are for more than researchers. You don't need decades of experience, and your smaller, meaningful ideas can get funded. The takeaway is this: don't count yourself out before you even begin. With the right framing, your idea might be exactly what the funder is looking for. Now that we've talked about what grant writing is and the different types of grants, let's talk about the anatomy of a grant proposal. No matter the funder or the project, most proposals share a set of common sections, each with its own role in telling your story. We start first with the abstract, or maybe an executive summary. This is your snapshot, the quick overview that gives reviewers the big picture right away. Then comes the introduction or background, where you set the stage. Here you explain the context, the problem, and why your project matters. Next are your specific aims and objectives. This is where you clearly spell out what you intend to accomplish, your goals in plain, measurable terms. After that, you move into the methods or approach section. This is basically the nuts and bolts, how you plan to carry out the work, and why your strategy makes sense. Of course, every proposal must include a budget and a justification. Funders need to know not just what you're asking for, but how you will use it responsibly and what those costs are and if they're necessary. And finally, most grants will want to see your plan for sustainability and impact. This answers the question, what will happen after the grant ends, and how will your project make a lasting difference? Together, these sections form the backbone of a strong proposal. Each piece has a distinct purpose, but when woven together, they create a compelling case for why your idea deserves to be funded. In the next slides, we'll break these down one by one and look at what makes each section effective. When you're writing the abstract or the executive summary, think of it as the mini version of your whole proposal. In short, but it should give reviewers a clear, crystal picture of your project from start to finish. Let's walk through the key pieces you want to include. You'll start with the project title and purpose. This is where you tell reviewers what your project is and why it matters. It's the headline that sets the stage. So no complicated titles that explain exactly what you plan to do. Next is the background or need section. Here you identify the problem or gap your project is addressing. In other words, you're answering the question, why does this project deserve attention and funding? Then we move into the objectives. These should be clear and measurable. Think SMART goals. What exactly do you hope to accomplish? After that comes the methods or approach. This is a brief description of how you carry out the project. Keep it high level here in the abstract. You'll go into detail later in the proposal, but the abstract should give a quick overview of your plan. The next piece is the expected outcomes. Reviewers want to know, what will be the result of this project? What difference will it make? And finally, the significance or impact. This is where you connect the dots. Why does your project matter? Who will it benefit, and how will it make a lasting contribution? Put all these things together and your abstract becomes a powerful snapshot, something that not only summarizes your project, but also makes reviewers want to keep reading it. Methods for drafting abstracts. When it comes to writing an abstract, there are a few different formats you'll see most often, and the one you choose will depend on the type of grant and sometimes on the funder's specific requirements. The most traditional is the IMRAD, IMRAD format. That is Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. This is a standard in scientific and research writing. It works well, especially when it works especially well for research grants because it mirrors how reviewers are used to evaluating scientific work. Another option is the structured abstract. This breaks the information into clear subheadings like background, objectives, methods, results, conclusions, and sometimes impact. This style is becoming more popular because it guides reviewers step by step through your logic. It makes it easy for them to find exactly what they're looking for. And then there are narrative abstracts. These are written in one flowing paragraph without subheadings. They're often used for program, education, and community health grants where the focus is on telling a compelling story rather than presenting scientific results. So whichever format you choose, the important thing is to make sure your abstract communicates the essentials clearly. Now, let's talk about some best practices for drafting. First, keep it brief and focused. Most abstracts are between 250 and 500 words, about a page at most. A lot of times, funders will specify a word count, so you want to make sure that you're reading through the funder's materials carefully. Second, use clear, plain language. Reviewers come from different backgrounds, so avoid heavy jargon and unexplained acronyms. Third, write it last. Don't try to draft your abstract before you finish the full proposal. Once you have all the details in place, it's so much easier to step back and then to summarize them. Fourth, make it a standalone. It shouldn't have to refer on references or other sections of the proposal. If a reviewer only reads your abstract, they should still understand what your project is about, why it matters, and how you have accomplished it. And finally, always emphasize the so what. Why is this project worth funding? What differences will it make? That's the piece that really hooks the reviewers. So whether you're using the IMRAD, a structured approach, or a narrative style, these best practices will make sure your abstract is strong, clear, and persuasive. So the background and significance section. In this section, you're really setting the stage for why your project matters. This is your chance to convince reviewers that there's a real problem or gap that needs to be addressed, and that your project is the right way to address it. So let's break down the key pieces. First, start with the context and evidence. What do we already know from the literature, from practice, or from policy that frames this issue? Use credible sources, that is data, statistics, and prior studies to show your reviewers you've done your homework. Next, identify the problem or gap. What's missing? What's not working well? This is the heart of your argument, right? If there's no clear gap, there's no reason to fund the project. Then, highlight the relevance. Why does this issue matter specifically to nursing practice, education, and research? Make it clear. How does it affect patients, nurses, or the healthcare system as a whole? Finally, bring it home with the significance. Here, you'll explain how addressing the gap will make a difference, whether that's improving patient outcomes, advancing scientific knowledge, or enhancing how we train future nurses. So in short, this section answers two critical questions. Why is this problem important, and what difference will it make if we solve it? Get those answers across clearly, and you'll give your proposal a strong foundation. Now, when it comes to drafting the background and significance section, the quality of your writing here can make or break your proposal. Reviewers often decide in this section whether your project feels important and fundable. Let's talk about some strategies that make this section strong. First, use credible data. Back up your statements with solid evidence, statistics, research studies, professional guidelines, or national health reports. Don't rely on personal opinions or general knowledge. Reviewers want to see proof that the problem you're addressing is real and significant. Citing strong sources also show that you know the landscape and that your project is grounded in evidence. Second, make it a compelling story, but do it concisely. You don't need to write a mini dissertation. The goal is to convince reviewers quickly, not overwhelm them with details. Keep your sentences clear, avoid jargon, and use language that highlights urgency and importance. Think of it as telling a story. Here's the problem, here's why it matters, and here's why now is the right time to act on that. Third, clearly connect the problem to your objectives. This is where a lot of proposals fall short. It's not enough to say there's a problem. You have to draw a straight line from that problem to your specific aims. Reviewers should be able to see immediately how your project addresses the gap you've identified. If that link isn't obvious, your proposal will feel disconnected. And here's one more piece of advice. Don't forget the big picture. Always bring it back to impact. How will solving this problem advance nursing practice, improve patient care, or strengthen education? That's the ultimate so what that funders want to see. So in this section, back up your claims, write with clarity and focus, and make sure every word points toward why your project matters and why it deserves to be funded. The specific aims section is one of the most important parts of your grant proposal. This is where you tell reviewers exactly what you plan to accomplish. Think of it as the backbone of your project. Everything else in the proposal flows from here. First, you want to state your overall goal. This is the big picture vision or the long-term purpose of your project. It should connect directly back to the problem or gap you identified in the background section. Next, you'll lay out your specific aims and objectives. These are the concrete steps or outcomes you plan to achieve. Typically, you'll have 2 to 4 aims, enough to show substance, but not so many that the project feels unfocused. Each aim should be measurable and realistic. Then make sure to highlight the connection to the problem or the gap. Researchers should see clearly how each of your aims directly addresses the issues you described earlier. If that connection isn't obvious, your proposal may feel a little disjointed. And then finally, point to the expected impact. What differences will achieving these aims make? Will it improve patient outcomes, strengthen nursing education, or add valuable evidence to the field? Reviewers want to know that your aims aren't just tasks, they're steps towards meaningful change. So to sum it up, this section answers 3 big questions. What's the overall goal? What specific objectives will you achieve? And why do these objectives matter? Now, when you come to drafting the specific aims, how you phrase them is just as important as what they are. Let's talk about some strategies that'll make this section strong. First, use clear, action-oriented language. Start your aims with verbs like to evaluate, to develop, to implement, to assess. Think of Bloom's taxonomy. This keeps your objectives concrete and makes it easy for reviewers to see exactly what you intend to do. Second, make your aims SMART goals. SMART goals. The S is for specific, the M is for measurable, the A is for achievable, the R is for relevant, and the T is for time-bound, so SMART goals. A vague aim like improve patient care won't get you very far, but an aim like to implement a fall prevention program on 2 medical surgical units within 12 months and evaluate changes in fall rates is much stronger because it tells reviewers exactly what success will look like. Third, don't try to do too much. A common mistake is listing 6 or 7 objectives. That makes a project feel scattered and unrealistic. Reviewers prefer proposals with 2 to 4 strong, focused aims that can realistically be achieved in the grant period. Finally, I like to think of this section as the roadmap. Your objectives are the destination. If your reviewers follow your roadmap, they should clearly see where you're going and how you plan to get there. So, keep your aims sharp, realistic, and tightly connected to the problem you've already laid out. That's what makes this section more persuasive. The methods and approach section is really the heart of your proposal. This is where you lay out the plan, not just what you want to do, but exactly how you're going to do it. Reviewers will be asking in this section, is this plan realistic? Is it well thought out? And do they have the resources to pull it off? So let's look at the key components. First, we want to start with the project design. This is your blueprint. Here you describe the overall framework and strategy guiding your project. Maybe it's a quality improvement model, a research design like randomized control, or a community-based intervention. You'll also identify your population, participants, and setting. So basically, who's involved and where the work will take place. That might be nursing students in a simulation lab, older adults in a community health program, or patients on a med-surgical unit. The who and the where needs to be crystal clear. Then you explain the procedures or activities, step by step, what would actually be done, what steps will actually be taken. For example, implementing a fall prevention protocol, delivering a series of educational workshops, or piloting a new electronic documentation tool is part of the procedures or the activities that you would do. You'll also want to spell out the role and responsibilities. Who's on the team and what are they doing and who's doing what? Whether you have partners or collaborators involved. Maybe the project lead oversees the implementation, a research assistant collects data, and a community partner helps with recruitment. Funders want to know what the right steps are in place, who are the roles, and if the right people are doing the right jobs. Project design also includes how you handle data collection or information gathering. So what information you collect and how you collect it. This could be quantitative data like patient fall rates, infection rates, or student exam scores. Or it may be qualitative data like focus group interviews or satisfaction surveys. The key is that your data collection method matches your objectives. Then you move into the evaluation or measurement plan, showing how you would determine success. For example, if your aim is to reduce falls, your evaluation plan might compare pre- and post-intervention fall rates. If your goal is to improve nursing education, you might measure knowledge gains through pre- and post-test or confidence levels throughout the surveys. If your project involves patients, students, or sensitive data, you need to address ethical and regulatory considerations like approvals, confidentiality, and safety. If you're working with patients, you'll likely need an IRB. If you're collecting sensitive information, you need a plan to protect confidentiality. And even if you're working in an educational setting, think about consent, privacy, and safety. Finally, don't forget about sustainability or next steps, okay? Reviewers want to know what happens when the grant ends. For example, if a pilot program is successful, maybe the hospital will adopt it permanently, or you'll use the findings to apply for a larger grant. The second major component is your timeline and milestones. Here you lay out when things will happen and what the major checkpoints are along the way. A clear timeline reassures reviewers that your project is manageable and achievable within the grant period. A good way to show this is with a table or a Gantt chart. For instance, showing that maybe month 1 through 3, you may finalize protocols and training of staff. During months 4 through 6, you may begin your implementation. And then months 7 through 9, you're going to collect your midpoint data. Then months 10 to 12, you're going to analyze the full results and prepare your final report. So milestones give funders confidence that you'll stay on track because you're showing what you're doing incrementally. Next are the resources that are needed. This includes staff, facilities, equipment, and any special expertise that's required. It's your chance to demonstrate that you have the right people and the right tools to get the work done. Maybe you need access to a simulation lab or statistical software or a community health worker. Naming these upfront shows you've thought through what it takes to succeed. And finally, you want to touch on feasibility. Why is your approach practical and achievable? This is about reassuring the reviewers that you can do what you're proposing. Feasibility comes from several things: having the right team in place, having access to the setting and population, having realistic goals for the time frame, and having support from your institution and partners. For example, if you're proposing a community program, a letter of support from a community organization adds credibility, right? So if you're doing research showing you've already have an IRB approval or access to data makes it stronger. Basically, the reviewers want to see that the barriers are few and the supports are solid. So in short, the methods and approach section should give reviewers confidence. Confidence that your project is well designed, well supported, and set up for success. The methods and approach section is the strongest when it's written with clarity and focus. Reviewers are looking for a plan that feels both practical and persuasive, and these tips will help you deliver just that. First, be specific but concise. Avoid vague statements like, we will improve outcomes. Instead, state measurable actions. For example, you could say, we will reduce fall rates by 15% within 12 months on 2 med-surgical units. That tells reviewers exactly what you're aiming for and keeps the language very tight and concise. Second, use visuals whenever possible. A timeline, a flow chart, or a table can communicate your plan faster than paragraphs of text. Reviewers appreciate being able to see at a glance what will happen, when it will happen, and who's responsible. Third, align your methods directly with your specific aims. Every activity should be tied to one of your objectives. If something doesn't connect, it can make your project look unfocused. Think of it this way: your methods are the steps and your aims are the destinations. They have to match. Fourth, anticipate challenges or barriers. Acknowledge the reality that projects rarely run perfectly. Maybe recruitment could be slower than expected, or technology could pose problems. Showing that you've already thought about solutions makes you look more prepared and credible to the reviewer. And finally, emphasize credibility. Funders want to invest in teams they trust. Highlight your team's expertise. Show letters of support. Give examples of prior success. This reassures reviewers that not only is your plan strong, but you have the skills and the resources to carry it out successfully. So the key is simple: be clear, be focused, show foresight, and demonstrate that you and your team are ready to deliver. The budget section of your grant proposal is more than just numbers on a page. It tells the reviewers whether your project is realistic and whether you thought through the resources you'll need. The purpose here is simple: to show that every dollar you're requesting directly supports the project and that those costs are both reasonable and necessary. Now let's talk about the key components of this budget section, starting with the indirect costs. These are sometimes called overhead, right? So they cover things your institution provides to support the project, but that aren't necessarily tied to one specific activity. Things like utilities, administrative support, building space, or IT services. Most funders set a specific indirect cost rate for your organization, so you don't usually negotiate this, you just apply the standard rate. Next are the direct costs, which are the expenses you can point to and say, this is exactly what the money will be used for. Direct costs include personnel, such as salary support for principal investigator, co-investigators, research assistants, or project staff. Also, it includes supplies like software, educational materials, lab equipment, and printing. It could include travel, which may cover attending a conference to present your results or traveling for training or data collection. Then there's always this other cost section, which may be like, participant incentives, consultant fees, and facility rentals. Every one of these line items should be paired with a justification, not just what you're buying, but why it's necessary for the project. A few tips as you build this section: keep your budget realistic and transparent. Reviewers can spot inflated costs, and that hurts credibility. Make sure you can clearly explain why each expense matters. For example, don't just say supplies $5,000. Say simulation lab materials and software needed to carry out training sessions. So you want to be very specific when you can. Also, align your spending directly with your methods and your objectives. If you have an aim that requires staff training, you should see training reflected in the budget. If you plan to collect survey data, participant incentives should appear. Think of the budget and justification as another chance to tell your story. It should reinforce the feasibility of your project and reassure reviewers that you'll be a good steward of the funds. All right. Successful grant writing doesn't just happen by luck. There are some clear steps you can take to strengthen your chances, and I want to walk you through them. Step 1, identify your funder. Not every grant is a good match for every idea. The best proposals are the ones where the project lines up perfectly with the funder's mission and priorities. So, before you start writing, take time to research and ask, does this funder care about the same outcomes I care about? Step 2, understand the grant guidelines. This may sound obvious, but is where many applications fall apart. Every funder has specific instructions regarding formatting, page limits, deadlines, and even font size sometimes. If you miss one of these details, your proposal might not even get reviewed. Think of the guidelines as the rule book. You have to follow them exactly. Step 3, write clear and concisely. Reviewers may not be experts in your exact area, so avoid heavy jargon, use plain language, and focus on telling a compelling story. What you want to do, why it matters, and how you make it happen. The clearer your writing, the easier it is for reviewers to get behind your idea. Step 4, address the review criteria. Every grant program has a scoring criteria. That's what reviewers are looking at as they read. Your job is to connect the dots for them. Show exactly how your proposal checks those dots. Don't make them guess. Step 5, build a strong team if applicable. Funders want confidence that the right people are on board. That might mean highlighting your own expertise, but it could also mean pulling in collaborators and community partners and senior mentors. Letters of support go a long way in backing you, so you want to make sure that you're including them. And finally, step 6, plan for sustainability. Funders don't just want to support a project that fades away when the money runs out. They want to know that the work will continue, whether through institutional support, new partnerships, or additional funding. Even a brief note about how the project will live on after the grant period can strengthen your case. So if you take nothing else from this particular slide, remember this: a strong proposal is clear, aligned with the funder, responsive to the criteria, backed by the right team, and built for long-term impact. Okay. I like to remind people that many strong ideas don't get funded, not because they weren't good ideas, but because of avoidable mistakes. By knowing the common pitfalls and learning how to sidestep them, you can make your proposal stronger and give yourself a much better chance at success. The first mistake is not following the guidelines. This one seems simple, but is one of the top reasons proposals get tossed out early. Reviewers can't consider a grant that doesn't meet the basic requirements. The solution: read the instructions carefully, follow them exactly, and double check things like formatting, deadline, and page limits. The second mistake is presenting a weak rationale for the project. If reviewers don't understand why your project matters, they won't fund it. Make sure you clearly explain the problem, provide strong evidence, and connect it directly to your objectives. Third, we see a lot of poor budgeting. Either the budget doesn't align with the aims or the costs aren't explained extremely well. To avoid this, make sure every expense is realistic, justified, and tied to your project goals. Next, unclear and overly ambitious objectives. If your aims are too vague, or if you're trying to do too much in a little bit of time, reviewers will definitely see the red flags. So keep your aims as a SMART goal and keep them down to 3 to 4 goals. Another common issue is the overuse of jargon or dense writing. Remember, not every reviewer will be an expert in your specialty. If they can't understand your proposal quickly, they won't score it highly. Keep your writing clear, simple, and compelling. Then there's ignoring the review criteria. Reviewers are literally scoring your proposal against a checklist. If you don't address the criteria directly, they won't connect the dots for you. Spell it out so they can see exactly how you meet the expectations. And finally, a lack of a sustainability plan. Funders want to know their investments will have a lasting value. Show them how your project will continue after the grant ends through institutional support, partnerships, or follow-up funding. So here's the takeaway for this information from this slide. Strong proposals are not just great ideas. They're about avoiding these common pitfalls, these common mistakes. If you can sidestep them, you'll instantly make your application more competitive. Once you've drafted your proposal, there are several ways to make it stronger and more competitive. These are the final touches that can really set your application apart. First, use compelling language and data. Reviewers respond to evidence, but they also respond to a clear story. Use data to highlight the urgency of a problem and then frame your project as a solution. It's about mixing fact with persuasion. 2, incorporate peer feedback. Don't try to write a proposal in isolation. Ask colleagues, mentors, or even people outside your field to review your draft. They'll catch things you might have missed, and they'll tell you where your ideas aren't as clear as you think they are. Third, include the letters of support that I've talked about. They're just powerful because they show you're not doing this work alone. A letter from your institution, a partner organization, or a community group demonstrates buy-in and increases the reviewer's confidence that your project can succeed and there's interest there. Fourth, ensure consistency across sections. One of the quickest ways to lose credibility is if your aims, methods, and budget don't line up. If you say you're going to run workshops, for example, reviewers should see workshops mentioned in their methods and in your budget. Everything should connect seamlessly. Fifth, polish and proofread. It may sound basic, but spelling errors, formatting mistakes, or sloppy tables can make reviewers question how detail-oriented you'll be with the actual project. So a clean, professional proposal tells reviewers you take the work seriously. And finally, add pilot data if you have it, or preliminary work if you have it. Even a small test run like survey results from a small group or early outcomes from a pilot program, they simply can go a long way. It shows feasibility and reassures reviewers that you can deliver on a larger scale. So remember, it's not just about writing a proposal, it's about making it persuasive, credible, and polished. These strategies help you do exactly that. All right, so when we talk about the grant opportunity for nurses, the first question is always, where do I even start? I don't know where to start. Where do I go? The good news is that there are a number of well-established sources designed to support nursing practice, education, and research. The first place to look is professional nursing organizations, groups like Sigma Theta Tau International, the American Nurses Foundation. They offer grants specifically for nurses. These organizations understand the profession, and they often fund projects that advance nursing knowledge, practice, and leadership. Second, there are federal agencies. Think of the National Institute of Health, also known as the NIH, the Health Resources and Service Administration, or HRSA, or HRSA, what we call for short. These agencies have long histories of funding health-related research and workforce development. For nurses who work on large-scale projects, federal grants can be a major source of support. Third, we have private and public foundations. One example is the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation, which has invested heavily in nursing research and leadership. Foundations like these often focus on innovation, equity, or specific health priorities, and they're very open to nursing-led projects. Fourth, don't overlook hospitals and health systems. Many institutions set aside internal funds to support quality improvement projects, pilot programs, or staff development. So these opportunities, they may be smaller in dollar amount, but they're an excellent way to get started and to build a track record. Fifth, local organization and community groups, grassroots groups, health departments, nonprofits, and regional initiatives often provide grants for projects that improve community health, access to care, or health equity. These can be a great fit for nurses working in community or public health settings. And finally, academic institutions. Many universities and colleges have internal seed funding, faculty development grants, or small pilot project awards. These are often designed to help you collect preliminary data and position yourself for larger external funding later. So, from national agencies to your local hospital or university, there's a wide spectrum of opportunities out there. The key is to match your idea with the right source. Now that we've looked at where funding can come from, let's talk about how to actually find those opportunities. It's one thing to know the sources exist, but it's a whole nother thing to know how to track them down. First, check organizational websites. This includes nursing associations, federal agencies, and foundations. Most of them post their funding announcements right on their site, so it's worth making a habit of checking it regularly. Second, use search engines and databases. Grants.gov is the central hub for federal funding. Foundation Directory Online and Candid are excellent for foundation grants. Even a simple Google search with the right keywords like nursing education grants or community health funding can turn up opportunities you might not have thought of. Third, leverage networking and collaboration. Sometimes the best way to hear about funding is through your colleagues, mentors, or community partners. People share calls for proposals or even invite you to collaborate on projects. Networking isn't just about career growth. It can directly connect you to funding. Fourth, sign up for alerts. Many organizations have newsletters, listservs, and email alerts for new funding opportunities. If you sign up once, the opportunities come directly to you instead of you having to go look for them every time. And finally, stay active in professional communities. Conferences, workshops, and professional groups are excellent spaces to learn about new funding. Often, organizations will announce grant opportunities at these events before they're widely circulated. So the takeaway here is funding is out there, but it takes some digging and some networking to find it. By building these habits of checking, searching, connecting, subscribing, and staying involved, you'll be much more likely to find the right opportunities for your ideas. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. So let me leave you with some high-level reminders, the essentials to keep in mind as you move forward with your grant writing. First, understand the structure. Every grant has core sections, and knowing what goes where helps you stay organized and makes it easier for reviewers to follow your logic. Second, align with review criteria. Reviewers score on basic or specific categories. Write with those criteria in mind. Sometimes make it your header. It's obvious when your proposal checks all the boxes and when it doesn't. Third, be clear and concise. Plain, compelling language backed by evidence is always stronger than jargon or filler. Remember, clarity builds credibility. Fourth, budget wisely. Make sure your numbers are realistic, justified, and connected directly to your aims. A strong budget shows you've thought through the project. Fifth, seek feedback before submitting. Let colleagues or mentors review your draft. They'll catch things you may overlook and help sharpen your proposal. Six, again, plan for sustainability. As I've noted before, funders want to see that your project will have life beyond their dollars, whether through institutional support, partnerships, or next steps. And finally, stay persistent. Not every proposal is funded on the first try. That's normal. Frustrating, but normal. Each submission is a chance to refine your ideas, strengthen your application, and increase your chances of success the next time around. So, if you remember nothing else from this project, remember this. Strong proposals are clear, aligned, practical, and persistent. That combination will carry you far in the grant writing process. So I just want to thank you all so much for your time and engagement today. Grant writing can feel like a big, intimidating process, but I hope this session gave you some clarity and some confidence to move forward with your own ideas. At this point, I love to open the floor for questions and discussion. You can email them to me at the email address that's listed here. And I'll happily respond to you. If you want to call me, you can call me as well. We can set up some time to meet to go over your questions. But I just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share your own experiences with grant writing, what's worked for you, what challenge you face, even opportunities you're curious about. Maybe there's something that I'm missing from this that you think should be added. I welcome it all. Please reach out to me. So you'll see that my contact information is listed here on the slide. Please don't hesitate to reach out, whether it's now or months down the road. If you'd like some guidance or feedback, or even just someone to brainstorm with, I'm always happy to support you as a colleague who is working to bring your ideas to life. So with that, you all have a great day. Bye-bye.